before we jump into the series today, I want to take a few minutes and talk about some exciting changes around here. The first one is I'm thrilled to be able to introduce our new kids director, Gina Linder. All right, nice. She's the lady. Just think, okay, just double checking. So, her and her family have been a part of our church for quite a while now. They've been heavily involved in youth ministry, but Gina actually comes with an extensive experience in elementary education and working with younger kids and their families. And so, throughout the interview process, it just seemed like a great fit. I mean, she definitely has a passion for kids, but even more so, her and her family they are in line with us as a church. They want kids to know and trust and walk with God. And so I'm just super excited about how God is going to use her and everybody else in kids ministry to build an even stronger kids program here at Access. And so before you leave today, are you in the room? She is. Hi. She's gonna, I didn't tell her this. She's gonna hang out by the elementary room, so it's kind of a central location. Go over there, say hi, tell her you're gonna give her a hard time. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. But anyway, say hi. And when you go over there, I want to say this. Please be sure to say thank you to Josiah Sherry as well, our previous kids director. I tell you what, he has put in so much work over the past few years. And I got to tell you, I'm just super pleased that he wants to stay involved in kids ministry and keep pouring into kids' lives just in a volunteer role. And so definitely some exciting and cool things happening there. But another piece of exciting news, starting Sunday, December 7th, we are officially adding a second Sunday morning service at 10:30. So, we're still going to keep our 9 a.m. option. And of course, we're going to continue to do our Tuesday evening services as well. That has a totally separate goal and kind of demographic we're shooting for. But beginning this weekend, we will have a later option on Sunday mornings. And this is something that honestly, as a church, we've been kind of keeping an eye on for a while, for several months. And if you just look around, it's time to pull the trigger. The reality is we're running out of room. The auditorium's packed. Don't even go look in the elementary room. I don't know how we fit all the kids in there, but absolutely packed. There have been services that we've had where people drive into our parking lot and then drive out because there's no open spaces. So it's cool to see so many new people, and I know I've gotten the chance to meet many of you. It's a great problem to have, but at the end of the day, it's still a problem. And so we never want, as a church, we never want you or anybody that you invite, anybody that's new, to feel like there isn't space here. And so, when new people visit, when families come for the first time, when you invite your friends and neighbors to come with you, we want everybody to have a great experience from the moment they drive into our parking lot to the moment they leave. And so that means we're going to add another service, and it's more than just a kind of space or square footage issue. It's a mission issue first and foremost. We exist as a church to draw people into a growing relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And you know what? I think all of us who are part of this church, we want as many people as possible to experience that kind of life-changing relationship. And how horrible would it be for somebody to miss out simply because we didn't have enough room? And so that's why we're making this change. I know it's kind of relatively quick, but especially as we head into the Christmas season, we need to be able to pivot quickly as a church and keep in step with what God is doing in our midst. So make note of that change. But in order to make this happen, and in order to keep this change sustainable long term, we need more of us to get involved. Okay, there's no other way around it. We need more people to step up and start volunteering across the board in every area. If you're a musician, I don't know why in the world you wouldn't be on the worship team. If you love coffee, go be in the coffee shop. If you're an extrovert and you like people, join our host team. If you're an introvert and you're scared of people, there's a dark room back there where you don't have to talk to anybody, okay? There's there's a spot for everybody. But I think the biggest and most immediate and most important need, Gina, get ready to say amen, is in our kids ministry. She's new. She'll get it eventually. So Our kids ministry needs some serious volunteer help. By my kind of conservative estimate, I think we could use another 40, maybe 50 people to step up and get plugged in. So we need more help really across the spectrum in kids ministry. Check in, nursery, preschool, elementary room, not only just to pull off 2 services, but to keep our Tuesday night services running as well. And so here's the thing, if you have been coming to Access Church for a while, you consider this your home church, maybe it's a couple months, or even for some of us, if it's been a couple years, okay? And you haven't started volunteering yet, I can't think of a better time. This is the perfect opportunity to take that next step and get plugged into ministry. And you don't have to have everything figured out. Nobody's going to give you a Bible quiz before you start serving, okay? We will train you, we will equip you, we will help you find a spot that fits best for you. But the point is, and don't miss this, we need you. We need you. God is clearly bringing more and more people to himself through the ministry of our church, and it's our responsibility to be ready when people come. And so here's what I am asking each of you. If you are not volunteering yet, I want you to take a next step today. You can scan the QR code on the seat back in front of you. That'll bring you up to a form. Or you can head to our online hub, accesschurch.info, click on the button serve. That'll bring you to another form. And here's the thing, when you fill that out, one of our team members will follow up with you this week to get the ball rolling. So super excited for the change and the growth and new faces. Definitely a win for our church. It is awesome. I hope you feel this way. It's awesome to be a part of God's transforming work in our community. Let's just keep working and partnering together so that more and more people can grow in their relationship with him. Sound good? All right. Now, today we are continuing the series we started last week called Parenting on Purpose. And really these kind of 4 weeks are just about, being more intentional with how we raise our kids. Because I think every parent wants to get this right, Every parent wants their kids to be kind and confident and compassionate. We want our kids to grow up and be responsible adults, be an asset to society. But that doesn't happen on accident. And it's certainly not an easy role either. I think any of us are parents, we can so quickly fall into survival mode where we're tired and busy and stretched thin. And it's so simple for us to react to whatever's loudest in the moment. We tend to, I know this is true for me sometimes, we tend to deal with what's most urgent and not most important. I would assume those of us that have kids, we love them deeply, but come on, we're just trying to make it through the week sometimes, right? The reality is, we only get one shot at this parenting thing. And so we can just allow our kids to grow up and hope things turn out for the best, or we can be deliberate and we can focus our efforts. And so that's what this series is about. The role, the job of parenting, it's not about being perfect or having, cute little pictures on the fireplace or the best looking Instagram feed. Parenting is about making some key decisions, setting some important priorities so that we can raise the best people possible. And like I mentioned last week, the great thing is God cares about how we do this. He cares about this part of our lives and shares his wisdom with us. If you weren't here last week or haven't had a chance to catch up online, we kicked this thing off by really talking about, I think, the most foundational part of parenting, and that is our dependence on God ourselves. As parents, as people, before we can be the people that we need to be, we need to allow God to transform us into the people we need. We can't parent if we are not made more whole ourselves. And depending on God in this parenting thing is about learning to rely on his strength and his grace and his patience. It's about learning for us personally to receive his love and his peace and his fullness. Why? Because here's what's true about all of us. If it's just on us, none of us have what it takes. We don't. It's only through a relationship with our own Heavenly Father that we can be more healed and more fulfilled and more whole so that we can better raise our kids without our own faults or inadequacies getting in the way. And listen, while God certainly wants and invites us to connect with him on a personal level. That's super important. There's more to the role than just that too. Like we have to do things as parents. And I think one of the most overlooked parts of at least modern parenting is that we are responsible to give and to set direction. Kids don't come out with the latest software updates, you know? They need to be taught and molded and shown what's right and what's wrong. Kids, when they're born, they come with a lot of creativity, a lot of curiosity. That's awesome. But they don't come prepackaged with wisdom and maturity. That's why one of the primary functions of a parent is to provide this, to give direction. And I think early on when our kids are really little, we know this. We teach kids, don't touch a hot stove. Don't eat the Play-Doh, right? Don't ingest the glue sort of thing. We teach kids and we direct them, here's how to use your inside voice. Here's where to go to the bathroom. But I think what's happening more and more, especially in our kind of current time period, is so many parents, and maybe even some of us, we're starting to give less direction at earlier and earlier ages. We just kind of assume that they're going to figure it out and they're going to know what's right and they'll make good choices and you know what, they'll arrive at adulthood with good values and solid priorities. Can I just say the quiet part out loud? They don't. Okay, they don't. That's not the natural way things go. We've all seen what happens when kids don't have enough direction. It is chaos. It is a war zone, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally as well. On our own, our kids, they don't drift towards what's good. They drift towards what's fun, towards what's easy, towards whatever's popular in the moment. And here's the reality. Every kid ends up somewhere, but very few end up there on purpose. And so our role as parents, a huge part of what we've been called to do, is to direct and shape what that somewhere looks like. God has given those of us parents or maybe guardians, or if you're a grandparent and around those kids a long time, a spiritual parent. God has given us the incredible role and also the incredible responsibility to set the course. It's our job. And again, I'm pretty sure all of us who are parents, we want to do this right. We want our kids to be great people. We want them to have good relationships. We want them to know what really matters. But we are raising a generation in a world, in a culture that is making that goal harder and harder to reach. And I wonder if some of us haven't been kind of led astray already. On one hand, it seems as if we're kind of relegating this responsibility to give and set direction. We're saying that's the school's job. Somewhere along the way, I don't think it was on purpose, but it's definitely there. A lot of us parents started to assume that this is the school's job. You know what? The schools will handle not only education, but the schools will teach life skills. The schools will give good values. The school will give some moral lessons along the way. And you know what? I'm super happy that there are some good teachers. There are a lot of good people who work in our schools who work incredibly hard and have unbelievable influence on the next generation. But the teachers and the administrators in our school districts, they weren't called to raise our kids. That's not their role. Teachers can educate, but they shouldn't be the ones to shape a child's heart. Schools can teach formulas and facts, but they shouldn't be the ones to develop character and conviction. That is the job of a parent. And if we hand off that responsibility, even if it's unintentional, I don't think it should be any surprise why the younger generations, you know what, they might have a lot of knowledge, but they have so little wisdom. It shouldn't come as a surprise why so many younger people are so passionate, but they have so little perspective. It's not the school's job. And then even beyond that, culture is telling us, we're being sold this idea that, well, we just need to let our kids be themselves. Hey, let them figure it out. Oh my gosh, don't push your beliefs on them. Let them discover their own truth. They can make their own decisions. And on the surface, that might sound really good and noble and harmless, but that is a dangerous, dangerous path to take. The reality is, kids are always going to pick up their cues from someone or something. If we don't give direction as parents, it's not just that they stay in this neutral, ambiguous state until they reach adulthood. No, they are being shaped and directed and molded already by the shows they watch, by the music they listen to, by the videos they scroll, by the friends they hang out with. If we as parents don't get intentional about providing direction, make no mistake, something else is going to fill that void. The world is not neutral. Culture is not passive. There are values being preached all the time. There are identities being shaped all the time. Worldviews being formed in thousands of little ways every single day. The question is not whether our kids will be influenced or not, whether they're going to get direction or not. The question is who's doing the influencing? Who's going to be the one to set direction? That's why God has called parents to step up and to lead the way. When it comes to giving direction, one of the clearest and honestly most practical verses in the Bible is found in Proverbs 22. And God says, direct your children onto the right path. And when they are older, they will not leave it. Now, that doesn't mean if we raise our kids a certain way, they're always going to make the right decisions. This is a proverb, not a promise. But the idea behind this, God's heart in sharing this with us, is that when we as parents are intentional about teaching and directing and modeling what's the right path, there's a far greater chance that our kids will keep walking that same direction as they grow. We are the ones who set the trajectory. We are the ones who point them towards a direction that over time becomes more and more familiar and hopefully more and more just instinctive to our kids. And again, no one else is meant to do this for us. Other people and other things can have a part, but it's not the school's job to teach our kids to be honest. It's not their boss's job to teach them responsibility. It's certainly not YouTube's job to give them a moral compass. My gosh, that's on us. God gave parents the role of shaping character and forming consciences. We're the ones who need to teach what's right and wrong, who need to explain why it's right or why it's wrong. We can't just hope they figure it out somewhere along the way. That means that we have to be intentional about directing values, directing attitudes, directing priorities, directing relationships, directing their worldview. This is so much bigger than just hope you survive 18 years. No, what we're trying to do is prepare them for life. That's what God gets at through Solomon's words earlier in Proverbs. He says, my child, listen to me and do as I say, and you will have a long, good life. Listen, I'm going to teach you wisdom's ways. I'm going to lead you in straight paths. That way, when you walk, you won't be held back. When you run, you won't stumble. He's pleading with his kid, take hold of my instructions. Don't let them go. Guard them. Guard this instruction, this direction I'm giving you, for they are the key to life. What he's talking about is not getting our kids to memorize a list of rules. He's describing this kind of influence, this kind of direction that produces wisdom and maturity. What he's saying in here is, hey, I want you to know how life works. I want you to understand cause and effect. I want you to get that there are certain choices that have certain consequences. That's what it means to lead in straight paths. The goal of parenting is not to control behavior for 18 years. It's to shape hearts and minds that can choose what's right, even when we're not around. Our job isn't to raise kids who simply behave. I mean, hopefully they do that, but even more so, it's to raise kids who believe what's true, who can think clearly on their own, who can understand consequences, who care about other people. Parenting on purpose isn't only teaching kids what to do, it's about helping our kids see why it matters in the first place. We need to direct and teach our kids, use kind words, but also use kind words because here's how your language affects other people. Part of direction is tell the truth, but not just stopping there. It's also here's why telling the truth builds trust in other people. Here's how lying destroys your reputation with other people. We need to be the ones to direct and to teach our kids, you got to work hard. Okay, nothing comes free in life. But also, here's why. Here's how having the discipline and the follow through will open doors later in life. Again, the goal is not to raise kids who just know the rules, but to raise kids who understand reality. It's moving from beyond because I said so. Good place to start, okay? If your kids are like 10 or under, I think that's all you need because I said so. But that's not where it stops. As they get older, it should be, hey, do what I said, but also because this is just the wise thing to do. This is the right thing to do. This shift that Solomon is talking about here, that God inspired him to write, it's teaching the kind of wisdom and maturity that keeps our kids from being held back, that keeps our kids from tripping and stumbling over the same mistakes over and over again and hurting themselves or hurting others. This kind of direction is about giving them perspective and maturity to walk through life with a clear sense of, hey, what's right? What's healthy? What's wise? So what does this kind of thing look like? I mean, practically speaking, the daily grind of life, what might it look like for you and I to be more intentional with giving direction? I think one of the areas that we, including myself, that we often get this wrong is we tend to think of direction as like these little one-time events, you know? We finally don't raise your hand, but how many of us we finally work up the courage to sit down and we rehearse the speech for 3 weeks, and we give it and the kid is just right over their head and we assume everything's good. Yeah, I did my parenting thing, right? Sorry to burst your bubble. That doesn't work, okay? Rarely is direction one long conversation that changes everything. But you know what it is? It's hundreds, if not thousands, of smaller ones that slowly build up over time, line upon line, precept upon precept. That's where growth happens. Our kids, young or old, they rarely learn something the first time they hear it. We rarely learn something the first time we hear it. How do they learn? Well, they learn it when it's reinforced again and again and again in different moments, in different ways, in different tones, in different situations. When we repeat what's right, we make that more normal. When we reinforce the same values week after week, month after month, that's when those things start to take root. Every reminder matters. Every correction matters. Every conversation, hey, let's talk about that for a minute. All of that stuff is another layer of character being shaped and developed and strengthened. If we want our kids to grow and mature, then we got to be giving direction constantly, not just one time, not just every 16th month, but over and over and over again. The kind of direction that we need to give as parents, not only is it not a one-time thing, but usually it's not something that we can schedule either. We just need to address opportunities as they show up in real time. There's an opportunity to give direction when our kids have had an argument with a friend, when they're stressed about, hey, are they going to make the team or make the grade? When our kids are maybe hurting over a breakup or because one of their friends said something cutting. There are so many teachable moments And I think we miss them often because we're not just paying attention, right? And again, this doesn't always need to be some big ordeal. Yes, there are some situations that need special time set apart to work through something, but I think just as often, it can be short, it can be sweet. We don't have to launch into some lecture. We can say a sentence, we can ask a couple questions. And you know what? That can be enough to reinforce direction. I think this is especially helpful when it comes to teenagers and adult kids to ask things like, "Hey, do you think that was the right way to handle it? How do you think they felt when you reacted like that? Or how did you feel when they reacted like that?" To sit down, just have a quick conversation in the car. "Hey, what do you think you can do differently next time?" Giving direction like that is a fantastic way to shape and to lead our kids. And obviously, this looks different in every season of parenting. When our kids are young, we need to lead mostly through rigid structure and boundaries. Our kids, when they're young, need clear lines and consistent expectations. This is right. This is wrong. This is safe. That's not. Those early years, that's where habits are formed about respect and honor and patience. Direction at a young age, that like 5 and under sort of thing, that is mostly about repetition, about reinforcement, about just saying the same things over and over and over again. But as they grow into their teenage years, I think the role starts to shift. We as parents, this can be hard for some of us to do, but you know what? We should move from controlling the environment to more coaching the decisions. I think the goal of parenting in those teen years isn't to make every choice for our kids, but to help them learn how to think, how to choose wisely on their own. I think we should start to replace commands with conversations. We guide and advise. And you know what? Sometimes, as hard as it is, we step back and let them feel the consequences to learn the lessons that words can't teach on their own. That's all part of the direction we need to give. And even I know many of us, we have kids who are adults. Our role, our responsibility to give direction, it doesn't disappear, it just evolves yet again. I think direction with adult kids looks like, influence through example and humility and just our presence. It's no longer about authority. We don't have authority over our adult kids, but it is about credibility because they will notice the tone in our voice when we're stressed. They'll notice whether we keep or break our promises. They pay attention to how we treat other people and talk about other people. This is true for every stage of parenting and every stage of life in general, but our lives give the message long before our lips ever do. And the way we handle relationships and money and work and disappointment and all the other things in life, that speaks volumes to our adult children. Hopefully, they don't need us to tell them what to do anymore, but they will still watch how we navigate life. They still look for stability and wisdom in how we go about our days. So at the end of the day, the goal of parenting is to raise responsible, capable adults with character, with integrity, with perspective. Our goal should be to help them grow into people who can handle pressure and relationships and responsibility with wisdom. And that means one of our primary roles is to direct them that way, to teach and to train and to lead them towards maturity. The win is not that they always listen in every single little thing, but the win is that one day our kids don't need constant supervision to make good decisions. So the question I think we need to ask ourselves is, what direction are we setting? What kind of person are we leading them to become? Because one way or another, our kids are going to receive direction. And I believe nowhere does this matter more than when it comes to faith. This is the single most important direction that we could ever give to our kids. to raise them in an environment where they can know God and have a relationship with Him for themselves. Every other lesson we give will eventually fade with time, but this is the one area that has eternal impact. In Deuteronomy, we read this instruction from the Lord. He says, "You must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I am giving you today, these 10 commandment sorts of things. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you're at home and when you're on the road, when you're going to bed and when you're getting up." Like, translation, this is the most important thing we could ever talk about, the most important direction we could ever give. But the original audience was the nation of Israel, and they find themselves in this strange land, and they're surrounded by all these competing ideologies and all this anti-God culture. Does that sound familiar to anyone? And God's message was simple. Not only you commit yourself to this, but you know what? Make sure your kids know who I am too. Make sure you direct your kids to have faith for themselves. Make this the number one thing that you teach and train anywhere you are, wherever you are, whatever time it is. This is direction at the highest level. We see the same sort of encouragement, instruction in Psalm 78. We will not hide these truths from our children. We will tell the next generation about the glorious deeds of the Lord, about His power and His mighty wonders. He commanded our ancestors to teach them to their children what we just read, so the next generation might know them, even the children not yet born. And they, in turn, will teach their own children. And so each generation should set its hope anew on God, not forgetting His glorious miracles and obeying His commands and forgetting how awesome and loving and wonderful He is. This is not just a casual, well, I hope they grow up to be Christians kind of stance. This is intentionality. This is leading kids to faith on purpose. This is understanding what's most important, not only in this life, but in the next, and making sure it's emphasized appropriately. But I just want to be honest with us for a minute. I think most of us would say we want our kids to know God, right? But the way we sometimes live our lives usually tells a different story. Our schedules and our priorities and how we spend our money, those things reveal what actually matters the most. And if there is one red flag I could wave, a warning sign as a pastor for all of us, if there is one thing that I think is maybe the most dangerous in our culture today, it would be about kids' sports. Now, there is nothing inherently wrong with kids' sports themselves. There are some great benefits. You know, kids can learn teamwork and discipline and how to handle loss. Getting kids involved in sports can be a good way to develop character and perseverance. But I tell you what, as I just kind of look around, for a lot of families, and even some of us, something that might be okay in moderation has turned into a full-blown obsession, and it's just not healthy. At least it's not healthy if your kids having faith matters to you. Practices and tournaments and travel leagues and private coaching, for so many people, it consumes evenings and weekends and bank accounts. More and more families are planning their entire lives around their kids' sports, and often, way more often than should happen, the things of God get left behind. I mean, there's only 24 hours in a day, right? Something has to fall off. In fact, I would say from my kind of outside perspective, I think for a lot of families, kids' sports are what they worship. Now, worship is just another word for devotion. And whatever we spend our time and money and energy on, whatever we focus on and dream about and talk about most often, that's what we really worship, whether we like it or not. Don't answer out loud, but can we be honest with ourselves at least? In our homes, do we worship the God of heaven, or the God of T-ball. We say we want our kids to know God, but if they miss a practice and it's a crisis, while missing church is okay, what are we communicating? We say we want our kids to have faith, but if the calendar revolves around tournaments and not being together with other believers, are we really directing our kids onto the right path? I think if our kids know how to throw a ball, but they don't know how to pray, isn't that kind of a fail? If they know how to shoot a puck, but not read the Bible, didn't we as parents kind of miss the mark? I came across this picture a couple weeks ago and I saved it for this. There is such a small chance that your kid is going to become a professional athlete. There is such a small chance that your kid is going to become a celebrity. But there is a 100% guarantee that our kids will stand before Jesus someday, either headed to an eternal heaven with him or to an eternal hell apart from him. What are you teaching your children? Listen, this isn't about guilt. I hope that's not coming across. That's not my heart at all. But it is about clarity. Our kids are learning every day what's most important by what they see prioritized in our homes. And as parents, we have the opportunity, and I would even say the calling, to give our kids the greatest gift possible, a faith that is real and practiced and personal and not in isolation, but with other believers. So let's give direction where it counts most. Let's raise kids who don't just succeed at life for 100 short years here on earth, but let's give them and help them have a strong and growing relationship with God for themselves. Because at the end of the day, that is the one piece of direction that will matter forever. Parenting is hard work, but it is a good work. It is the long, slow process of shaping a life, of showing our kids where to go and who we want them to become. And you know what? There are going to be days where we get it right, and there are probably going to be a whole lot more days where we feel like we're failing. There are going to be days where through his grace we have patience, and there are going to be a lot of days where we lose our temper. But none of that changes the calling that God has given us. We are the single greatest influence in our child's lives, and the way we live, the way we love others, the way we lead, all of that matters. And when we do that, you know what? Then we can simply trust that God will take our imperfect efforts and use them for something lasting. And so wherever we are in our parenting journey, raising toddlers, coaching teenagers, watching our grown kids from a distance, let's stay faithful to what matters most. Let's keep directing, keep praying, keep trusting that the same God who wants to change and work in us is going to change and work in our kids through our efforts. God's not asking us to be perfect. He's just asking us to be intentional. And if we will do that, if we will depend on him ourselves and direct our kids towards him, then I think we can rest knowing that we are in step and in sync with what God has for us as parents. Let's just connect with him for a few moments before we head out. Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you for the blessing that is our kids. Your word says that they are a blessing to our lives from you. And God, there is such joy and happiness and warm fuzzies that come with our kids. And there's also heartache and tears and sadness and all these different things. And God, I just want to ask you that, the same thing that we talked about last week, just help us connect with you more deeply, more fully. Help us to understand the role, the job that you've given us as parents. Father, I pray that you would wake us up from maybe some of our own complacency when it comes to leading our kids, both in life and even more importantly, towards you. I pray, God, that you would give us supernatural wisdom and supernatural courage and supernatural faithfulness to what you have called us to do as parents so that we can raise our kids as best as possible. And Father, I just ask more than anything else for every parent in the room, every gonna be someday parent, everybody online. Father, I pray that you would stir it up in us so much that the number one thing we focus on is our kids knowing you. Help us to do that without being pushy, without, getting on them so hard that they run the other way. But God, with your love, with your grace, with your truth, with your perspective, with your love for our kids being even greater than our own love, help us, Father, teach and point our children to you. May you lead us as we take this role to lead and direct our kids. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.